Our greatest ally in the Middle East retaliating against one of its and our biggest adversaries, Israel striking Iran. We have wondered for years what might happen if this very situation unfolded. But today, in the aftermath, near silence from the White House. We first heard from the Secretary of State overseas earlier this morning.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations.
And then when the press secretary took to the White House podium this afternoon, she preemptively told reporters, don't expect much.
I'm going to say it now, though I know you all will certainly ask me about it, that we do not have any comment on the reports at this time.
So after these historic strikes, why the silence? Come on in, I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, we made it to the end of the week. Happy Friday. Here we are. Here we go. Hanging out with us today, Aaron Perini is a Republican strategist. Michael Starr Hopkins, a Democratic strategist. Kurt Bardella, NewsNation contributor, Democratic strategist as well. And Denise Gitsom, former aide to George W. Bush, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in on this Friday afternoon. Letitia James seems like she might be back at it in New York. We'll get to that in a little bit, what's going on there. But first, the strikes from Israel on Iran earlier last night into today. And we finally heard from the White House about this today, Aaron, and it was essentially no comment. Why?
The White House has not come from a position of strength when it's come to anything geopolitically so far in this administration. So this is very reflective of that. They have been standing in the way of Israel being able to, or encouraging Israel not to plan a retaliatory strike against Iran, which for their own sovereignty, Israel has absolutely every right to and should. So for this White House to sit quiet, to sit on its hands, is doing so because they are more afraid of having to actually stand with Israel than they are anything else.
Is that what it is?
No, look, a famous poet once said, real G's move in silence like lasagna. This isn't the time for...
Is that famous poet?
Lil Wayne. We all know who it is. This isn't the time for bombastic language and hyperbole. Like, right now, we need everyone to be steady and calm so that we don't end up in a World War III. And I think that's what you're seeing from the White House.
Could both of you be right, though? Could they not want to show that publicly while also silence being the right play? Like, I wonder if both of you...
I think that's a very fair point to make, right? They could be saying you don't want to be bombastic, and they could be geopolitically weak at the same time and sitting on their hands because they don't want to upset anybody else.
I think at the end of the day, you want to let Israel and Iran come out first and speak about this. Like, I don't think the U.S. wants to be the one leading in how we're going to respond and be answering questions about
Israel
geopolitical...
did come out, though.
Well, I mean, there's been silence, pretty much. I mean, there's been an acknowledgement that the attacks happened.
It is remarkable, though, that this scenario had been thought about and talked about and mocked, I would think, privately for years, if not decades. Mm-hmm. It happened to an extent, Kurt, and the reaction has been silence, basically.
I think part of the calculus, too, though, is right now we have these very precarious funding bills moving through Congress, hopefully over the next day or two.
You think that plays into this?
I do. I think that they are very much saying, we're not going to say anything right now that can in any way give ammunition to anybody in Congress to not pass funding these bills. I think we'll have a lot more rhetoric from the White House once those bills get passed.
I don't know about that, though. Sorry to interrupt you, because the Israel bill, there's not really a lot of blocking of this bill. There's not a lot of opposition to the Israel side of it.
I just think that everything is so precarious with everything right now, moving through the Congress. Yeah. I think that's the cautious approach they're taking.
Well, and I think that Biden can't do anything right with his, sort of the increasingly progressive wing of his party. And so it's really hard for him to come out being pro-Israel at all without upsetting so many people in Michigan.
Do you think the election is part of the reason why we've...
Everything is about the election.
We are in the election, you're right. So everything is seemingly about the election. But is that why we haven't heard much?
No, because I'm going to tell you, nothing that is happening in April of 2024 is going to be talked about in October or November of 2024.
I don't know about
famous
nothing.
last words.
I'm pretty sure they're raising money right now.
I hope you're right.
All right, well, as Israel weighed whether to retaliate for Iran's attack last weekend, the Massachusetts Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton urged it to finish its operations in Gaza and not start a new war. The congressman is a member of the House Armed Services Committee and joins us live here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being back with us. We appreciate your time, sir. As always, you, by the way, for the audience, who doesn't know, you served in the Iraq War from 2001 to 2008, a member of the Marines as well. I wonder why, what is your interpretation of the events last night in the Middle East? Why seemingly, including the White House right now, there's silence around it?
Well, I think there are a couple of good points that your panel made. I mean, first of all, yes, we don't want to upset the apple cart here on Capitol Hill. We've worked very, very hard to get these bills finally to a place where they can get passed and give aid to our allies, as we should have done months ago, but this Republican Congress refused to do. And so that's important. Number two, we absolutely do not want to do anything that might escalate this into a regional war. That's not in our national security interest to get bogged down in a war in the Middle East, potentially sending American troops. And it's not, frankly, in Israel's national security interest either. So behind the scenes, we're doing what we can to tamp this down and say enough is enough, while at the same time, standing by our ally Israel in the face of this really unprecedented Iranian attack. So there are a few reasons why it's important for the White House not to get too excited right now. But I think you're right. In the next few days, especially once we learn more about the nature of the attack, we'll hear more rhetoric from President Biden.
Yeah, and President Biden is on his way now to Delaware, and as he left the White House to travel to Delaware, he could have talked to reporters. He didn't, just to show that clearly the White House is trying not to talk about this at the moment. I wonder, though, Congressman, what you think needs to happen next. What do you want to hear out of the president next?
Well, first of all, we just need to pass these aid bills. And when I talk to my Republican colleagues on Capitol Hill, just to find out simple things like, when are we going to vote? They all throw up their hands and say, Seth, I don't know. It's total chaos in the Republican conference right now. And so although it does seem like things are finally on track, we won't know until those bills actually get passed through the House, hopefully tomorrow afternoon. So let's do everything we can to support that, first of all. Second, President Biden needs to continue to articulate a way forward here in the Middle East. You pointed out how I said Israel needs to focus on the war it has rather than starting another war. There are indications that Prime Minister Netanyahu may want to move against Hezbollah in Lebanon to dramatically escalate the conflict to the north. Look, this is going to go on for a while, and the White House needs to continue providing a steady hand, standing alongside Israel when it comes to defending itself, but doing whatever we can to make sure there's not a wider war in the Middle East.
Congressman, I promise you, I assure you, we are going to get to the Republican chaos as soon as we say goodbye to you here in a minute or so. But, and I hear you talk about it, but earlier today there were 55 Republicans who voted against moving forward with these bills, and 39 Democrats. So it's not like the Democratic Party is entirely united around the votes this weekend. And I wonder, sir, what you would say to the members of your party who are seemingly going to vote against this.
Well, look, I think what you'll see tomorrow is Democrats will be thoughtful about this, and there are some Democrats who will vote against certain aspects of these bills or certain individual pieces of the aid and vote in favor of others. What you don't see is this mass movement of Democrats to just support Vladimir Putin, to vote against Ukraine aid just because that's what Donald Trump says to do. That's what's happening on the other side of the aisle. And what's particularly striking, sitting on the House Armed Services Committee, is when Republicans come into the classified briefing, something, by the way, that Speaker Johnson never seemed to bother to do when he was on the Armed Services Committee. He's talked about how now he's getting intelligence briefings and it's changed his mind. He didn't show up for the intelligence briefings I sat in on the Armed Services Committee. But when there are Republicans there, a lot of them agree. They say we have to support Ukraine. We can't let Vladimir Putin win this war. We can't send a message to Xi Jinping that he can do the same thing in the Pacific. But then they're scared, and they get out on the House floor and they vote against it. Or they get out on TV and they say we shouldn't support Ukraine. So there's real hypocrisy.
What about the Democrats? Yeah, what about the Democrats, though, Congressman, who earlier this week voted against the resolution condemning from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free?
Well, look, I strongly disagree with them. I mean, what else do you want me to say? I strongly disagree with that. I certainly didn't vote that way myself. But at the end of the day, what you saw here on Capitol Hill is the Democratic Party bailing out the Republican Party to do the right thing for our national security. Since I've been in Congress, I don't think I have ever seen a rule. It's kind of inside baseball, but it's a procedural vote that's almost always on partisan lines. I've never seen a rule pass with more bipartisan support. That's due to Democrats coming together to bail out Republicans and do the right thing for the country.
Congressman Moulton, we'll leave it there. You are working on the weekend, sir. So thank you for being back with us here on the Hill on a Friday afternoon. There you go. And by the way, thanks for giving the panel a little bit of kudos there at the top of the evening. Have a nice weekend, sir. All right. As the showdown on foreign aid comes tomorrow, a third Republican congressman, Paul Gosar, has signaled support for ousting the House Speaker Mike Johnson. These Republicans say the Speaker is not addressing the border and is caving to Democrats. Okay, so these aid bills that are coming up tomorrow, one by one, $61 billion for Ukraine. You can see the three who are saying that they would like to oust the Speaker. $61 billion for Ukraine. About a third of that is to replenish U.S. munitions that have been given to Ukraine. Aid for Israel, $26 billion. About a third of that is for humanitarian assistance, and then another $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific region. The Republicans, some of them, are really upset with the House Speaker because in all of that, Aaron, the first go-around, border security was included. Now it's not, and that's why you have them threatening to oust the House Speaker, Mike Johnson. I don't think that's happening in an election year, and you think I'm wrong.
I think you could be wrong.
Okay.
I think that if they really wanted to make this motion happen, they would. They would send it to the floor and they would make this vote happen. But I will say, to Speaker Johnson's credit in all of this, he has been steadfast and said, I'm not afraid of the motion to vacate. I'm going to lead. I'm going to make the tough decisions, and the chips will fall where they may. And so he is bringing this up. There are hardliners that are threatening his job and trying to threaten his career. And he's saying, you know what, I'm going to still make sure that we do our job here. And he's doing it in a way that's bringing more Democrats on board to the Republican priorities here. Kudos to the Speaker.
I could not agree more. And this really speaks to the strength of his character, I think. As a man of faith, Jesus says, what good is it to win the whole world, or in this case, keep your speakership and lose your soul? And I think that his faith is really in that God put him there for a reason. That's the foundation of who he is. And if God wants to take him out or keep him in, that's going to be something that's left to God, but he's certainly not going to play politics with it. I think he's really tried to play cute, a little too cute. And I think that it's backfired as well. I mean, everyone is looking for moral courage, for some sort of guiding principles outside of the sheer politics of what we're seeing right now on Capitol Hill.
So earlier today, Donald Trump weighed in, and he threw the idea behind Ukraine funding. First off, he was the one who suggested the loan, which is a part of this legislation, though it can be waived down the line. And he said, get moving Europe, basically saying that Europe needs to start chipping in more for aid to Ukraine. Is he wrong there? Is he right?
He's not wrong. I think Europe should contribute more, but let's not drown the baby in the bathtub here. Like, what we have is a scenario where Russia is funding Iran, Russia is attacking Ukraine. These are all interconnected. And so by giving money to Ukraine, we weaken Russia. By making sure that we're funding Israel, who is funding Hezbollah, who's funding Iran, we are weakening Iran. Like, these are things that we should be doing. Whether you're Democrat, whether you're Republican, you want to make sure that we're protecting our alliances. And by spending this money, we are weakening Russia.
One of the reasons why I love hearing from Seth Moulton, he's a serious man.
Absolutely.
Yes. Served in Iraq, Harvard grad who served in Iraq, who came to Congress, right? That is as serious as you'll find. When I asked him, though, about Democrats who voted against the moving the bills forward, he said something along the lines of they'll do so in a thoughtful manner. In a thoughtful manner. Is that the right answer? I mean, there are still issues on the Democratic side, are there not?
I think what he said, which was, I disagree with them, and I've said so. Like, what else do you want me to say? And I think that's a fair response. I mean, he is one of the leading voices and authority figures when it comes to anything in the military and the armed services community, just by the virtue of his own service record. I think everyone across the aisle takes what he says very seriously. And there's nothing more to say other than, I disagree with them. I have said so. What else is there to say? But I want to piggyback on something Denise said, which I think is important. I agree with her that people in Congress have been looking for a leader in the Speaker's chair that has a certain degree of integrity. The reason why Democrats are willing to work with Speaker Johnson is because he has demonstrated that integrity. That's something that they never had with Kevin McCarthy, who they felt for better or worse, talked at both ends of his mouth, made a lot of promises to a lot of people, and they just didn't trust him. Johnson is in a very different position because there is that trust and belief in his integrity.
There's one point I will make when you were talking about us funding Israel and standing up to Russia. The Biden administration has released billions of dollars to Iran. They are helping fund the Hamas.
We always
and
have
the
this debate, though, but like that wasn't our money, though. That was money that was being held to a third party.
But that was money that is now being used in these instances to continue to fuel the attacks against Israel. And so for Democrats in this administration, what they need to be able to do is to have moral clarity on this. And they aren't, one, because the progressive wing of the party is saying they are pro-Palestine. That is why you saw the votes go the way you did. And you are seeing the administration geopolitically hand billions of dollars over to Iran.
This is just for the audience at home watching us here on NewsNation and listening to us on SiriusXM, this is a slice of the conversation, I think, what you just heard from these folks, from the congressman, that's been playing out really here in Washington over the last really several weeks into months. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a vote tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks this passes?
Yes.
Democrats and Republicans to a person. All right,
and thank God we have bipartisan support for something that's so important to who we are as a nation.
We'll leave it there. Still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation over the next 44 minutes or so. Did the state of Virginia just tackle one of the biggest money questions in all of college today? How the legislature there cleared the way for universities to pay their star athletes. Are more states going to do the same? Plus, why is one conservative organization here in Washington targeting that man right there, Prince Harry, and raising the idea of deporting the prince? We're going to ask them here coming up here on the Hill. And the state of New York now pushing back on Donald Trump's $175 million bond. Why Letitia James says that bond isn't good enough. Is she setting the stage for seizing his assets? You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. Stay with us. Back in a few. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Did you happen to see this earlier today? A new bill proposed by the Democratic congressman from the state of Mississippi, Benny Thompson, would strip Secret Service protection for anyone sentenced to jail for a felony. The, quote, disgraced Former Protectees Act is intended, you might think, as a not-so-subtle jab as former President Donald Trump, who, as we all know, is in court facing felony charges this week. But consider this. If it ever got to President Biden's desk, do you think he would sign it? You know who also received Secret Service protection? You know who also is facing felony charges? Hunter Biden.
Sign it.
All of this is stupid. Like, this is the kind of stupidity that causes people to tune out. Like, it's just, and that's with all due respect to Congressman Thomas. I have a lot of respect for him. But, like, this is the type of political garbage that, like, just...
If you're convicted of a felony, why should taxpayers be paying for your protection?
What are you talking about?
You might be a high-risk...
It's not hard to get a felony.
Don't commit crimes. Don't commit crimes.
So, there's a couple things going on here.
I love you said it's not hard to get a felony.
Well, a couple days ago, we ran a segment where we talked about if you protest on a bridge, that could be a felony.
And you shouldn't
now you lose your Secret Service protection.
So this was clearly intended to punk Trump.
Yeah. Yes. Obviously.
Yes. Hunter's facing felony charges.
He shouldn't get any protection either if he goes to jail.
But don't you think, so regardless of the politics, we should be protecting the President of the United States, former President of the United States, their family members and top cabinet? Is that crazy for me to say? Or no matter what the circumstance?
No matter what. No one should get a blank check for protection. If you go out there and murder people, should we give you Secret Service protection?
I mean, the president's granddaughter just 5 months ago in November, the Secret Service had to shoot because, like, her car was jacked, or there was an incident here in D.C.
I don't dispute that they shouldn't have protection, but if you go commit crimes, then you lose the right to have protection.
But that was not, I mean, for some of them, they do it outside of their protected window.
I just believe in law and order.
I think NewsNation
maybe it's the former Republican me that believes in law and order.
Well, I'll tell you this. I can tell you this. I think there should just be a new segment like Dumbest Bill of the Week on the Hill.
And that's what this is?
This is a clear winner this week.
Meantime, a jury is now officially seated in Trump's hush money trial with opening arguments set for next Monday. But that might be the second biggest legal story coming out of the Big Apple today. The Attorney General Letitia James, her office is now asking the judge in Trump's business fraud, the civil case, to void the $175 million bond that Trump posted. A filing notes Trump obtained the bond from, quote, a small insurer that is not authorized to write business in New York and thus not regulated by the state's insurance department, had never before written a surety bond in New York or in the prior 2 years in any other jurisdiction, and has a total policyholder surplus of just $138 million. As the day came to a close, here was the former president.
A crooked AG, Letitia James, who campaigned in the fact that I'm going to get Trump, That's all she said for 2 years. And it's people don't want to see this stuff, where you have violent criminals all over the streets of New York and nothing happens.
Okay, you worked in that office, right?
Yeah.
In New York?
Yeah, I was a public defender and a prosecutor in New York.
Does she have a point?
Absolutely. Look,
okay.
You have to make sure that the bond is fit.
Is this horrible from a PR perspective?
I don't know about horrible. I think the fact that she has celebrated the taking of his property so publicly doesn't look good for potentially.
Right,
doesn't
but she's talked about it widespread.
Yeah, I think that was a PR mistake. But I think now, because if she went to go do it, it looks like such a political move that she can't do it.
See, look at this: Republicans and Democrats coming together,
agreeing on Trump of all things.
This is all Trump's doing.
No.
This is all Trump's doing.
No,
this is where it's split.
Remember,
this happened because of the Eugene Carroll second comment.
Letitia James has played a very big part of this, and she is a woman you don't get between her and a camera. She has really discredited a lot of her work.
A jury
but she's we're talking about her right now, and so I'm talking about her, and I'm talking about her behavior, and whether or not this is why there are these questions. This is why he continues to hit her, because she has been so celebratory. She has been so aggressive and so happy in saying, you're going to lose your property, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose all of these assets. That is why we get to sit here and say this is a problem for her, because she does behave the way she does.
It still doesn't change the fact that the bond is not worth the paper it's written on.
That wasn't what I was arguing. I was arguing why we get to have this conversation.
In a court of law, that's all that's going to matter.
But here,
court of public opinion matters too.
They're not in the.
This is why only 2 in 10 voters actually think that Trump's going to get a fair shake in these criminal trials. If I were leading the Democratic Party, I would say, you guys, in the same way that Biden is exercising so much restraint and talking about Iran and Israel right now.
By the way, the court cases. He's not talking about the court cases at all.
But in this case, they need to impose some message discipline, because this is only going to undermine. It's only going to.
Democrats and message discipline?
Yeah, I know. Well, we have that issue too. But I'm just saying, this is all about that feeding right in the Trump narrative of the weaponization lawfare.
Lawfare.
All right. Still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation. The anti-Israel protests continuing today. So what is the White House saying about it now? They were just asked. We'll play that sound on the other side of the break. And why is one group here in Washington suing the Department of Homeland Security about that man right there, Prince Harry? What's their beef? We'll ask them on the other side of the break when the Hill on NewsNation returns.
Students are subject to hostile environments because of their faith or ethnicity. Schools must act. Students must be safe to learn, and that's where we stand on that one.
That the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, today responding to the protests and arrests from the anti-Israel demonstrators on Columbia University's campus. On Thursday, 108 people were arrested and charged with trespassing. Protests continued on campus today. This right here, just some of the video from the scene earlier today. All right, as this happens yet again in New York City, on the campus or adjacent to it of Columbia University, what do you see around the table, Denise?
I mean, I see a bunch of people who are protesting in support of a government that they would never be able to protest under. All the women in that group, anyone who's LGBTQ, you wouldn't even have a voice under the regime that they're supporting.
What do you see there, Kurt?
I just see people exercising their First Amendment. That's what makes this country great. That's what makes this country better than all the other countries, even the ones that they are the subject of these protests, that you can do this right now and you can do it free of any government tyranny.
I see a bunch of people who need to read history books, who, while they may have issues with the Israeli government, need to learn the nuances of the difference between the government and the people. And I hope that, they do take that opportunity.
By the way, I don't want to jump in on you here. Those are images from earlier today. Let's show the live images right now if we have. This is a live look right now at Columbia University. Aaron, sorry, your turn now.
What I see, especially when I'm hearing them say from the land to the sea, that is anti-Semitism, and it's on the streets of New York City in 2024 at one of our highest institutions in the country. That is the kind of indoctrination that the hard right and conservatives have been really worried about, that is infiltrating our school systems and our higher education in the United States. That's really worrisome. And we have all seen the video of the woman who was screaming, "I am Hamas, we are Hamas." She did it with her face covered. She is sympathizing with a terrorist organization. That, while we can all agree you have your First Amendment right, you don't sympathize with the terrorists in this country. That is just not an okay position to take.
All right, live look there again at Columbia University in New York. Meantime, this week, the Duke of Sussex, also known as Prince Harry, changed his primary residency from Britain to the U.S. 4 years after moving across the pond. But he faces the potential threat now of deportation, as the prince admitted his use of illegal drugs in his tell-all book, Spare. Here in Washington, the Heritage Foundation has sued the Department of Homeland Security in a request to obtain Prince Harry's visa immigration records. Niall Gardner is with the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom and a former aide to the former Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. He joins us live. Niall, nice to be, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. So explain to us, what are you doing and why?
Well, many thanks for having me on the show today. And as you mentioned earlier, the Heritage Foundation has taken the Department of Homeland Security to federal court in order to release the immigration records of Prince Harry. And we're doing this because we believe that no one should be above U.S. immigration law, and that includes royals like Prince Harry. Prince Harry admitted to widespread illegal drug use in his book Spare. And we want to know whether or not Prince Harry was truthful on his application and whether or not he lied. And also, we would like to know whether or not he received some kind of special preferential treatment by U.S. authorities. So everyone should be fully held to account. Let the American people see what exactly is in Prince Harry's immigration records. And right now, a federal judge is reviewing those records in camera, and he is expected to make a ruling on the potential release of those records within the next few weeks.
So for the folks at home watching us here on NewsNation, listening on Sirius XM, who don't know about the Heritage Foundation, widely respected here in Washington. Conservative group, widely respected, no doubt about it. But again, to get to the question why, like of all the things, Niall, that your group could be doing, why this?
Well, that's a very good question, and we're doing this because we believe in the rule of law. We believe in the firm and robust application of U.S. immigration laws, and for many decades, the Heritage Foundation has been at the forefront of calling for the strict enforcement of U.S. immigration laws. Those laws have to apply to everybody, including Prince Harry. And so the Heritage Foundation is naturally calling for the release of Harry's immigration records. We have for a very long time been a very prominent force here in Washington calling for the robust application of immigration law, and that must apply to Prince Harry as well. So I think it's a natural fit for the Heritage Foundation here to be calling for these records to be released, and the American people deserve accountability and transparency from the United States government.
Before I let you go, Niall, do you have anybody else on your radar? Any other individual, famous or not, that you want to look into as well?
Well, we believe that all individuals who apply to the United States must follow the law. Any illegal immigrants, of course, in the United States should be deported. And anyone who lies, of course, on an immigration application to the United States should face deportation. So let's see exactly what is in Prince Harry's immigration records. Let the American people see for themselves what exactly Prince Harry put down on those forms.
Niall Gardner, we got to leave it there on a Friday afternoon. We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you so much. And if there's an update, please let us know. So
thank you very
much. There are past examples of this. I know you guys are laughing. There are past examples of this. The Sex Pistols denied entry into the United States because the band members reportedly had criminal records, including drug arrests, auto theft, and assaulting a police officer. The Rolling Stones frontman Brian Jones denied entry into the U.S. in 1969 because of drug convictions at the point in time. So,
Thank you.
It's happened before.
What a bunch of prudes. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's more
come on.
contextual than anything, though. I mean, like, we have millions of people coming over the southern border, and we are not, if we should just really be focused on the issue instead of being distracted by something it's just like such a ridiculous thing for anyone to be focused on. I mean, I think we're all in agreement.
Season.
But also, I do think he might be a Brit working on behalf of his government, trying to keep Prince Harry from going back. That's entirely possible.
This is clearly a publicity stunt. It's so trivial. It's downright comical. And by the way, nobody in America gives a crap. There is not some...
on Prince Harry?
I don't think there are people who are clamoring to see
people
Prince
on the
Harry's
right.
immigration record.
Yeah. Trump hates
I
him.
mean, that's the crux of his thing. The American people deserve to see the file. No one gives a crap.
I got to tell you, out of all the things that we're like, we have going on in this country, reading Prince Harry's immigration file is just not one that's high on my list. I would rather we drop the southern border. I would rather that there are bigger concerns than a wealthy person. I understand
the Heritage Foundation is doing God's work right now.
I understand the point they're trying to make and the example they're trying to make. I think it would be good for them publicity-wise to have other names as well.
Yes. I thought that was a great question. And not just because I like you, but that was a good question because they had no... Yeah, no.
He's got to have a better answer than that.
Yeah, you can't...
Because it just looks like what it is, which is blatant publicity.
It's fascinating, and there's going to be, I would think, a ruling one way or another because this is, a lawsuit's involved. We'll let you know what comes of it. Still to come here from the Hill. Did the state of Virginia just score big? Lawmakers there now clearing the way for universities to pay their star athletes directly. You know your favorite college sports team? Is UVA, Virginia Tech, or the schools in Virginia one-upping them? Does your state need to follow suit? What happened in Virginia yesterday you might want to pay attention to, college sports fans. Susie Schuster joins us on the other side of the break to explain. You're watching The Hill.
Saying about Idaho murder suspect Brian Koberger's alibi, plus the rest armorer sentenced to 18 months. How much jail time could Alec Baldwin face? An all-star panel on Dan Abrams Live. Tonight on NewsNation.
Has signed an historic NIL law that could change college sports landscape. NIL, as you might know, stands for name, image, and likeness. Now, the law allows schools in Virginia to directly pay their athletes via marketing deals and would not categorize the students as employees of the school. Susie Schuster is the co-host of the What's the Football podcast, joins us once again live here on The Hill. Susie, thanks for being back. Great to see you.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I saw this story yesterday, and I thought to myself, you know what? The arms race in college sports is on, and this is just the latest chapter now that universities in a state are directly allowed to pay the kids in the athletic programs.
Well, let's just call it what it really is. It's just another way to control the players as much as they can. And I think we have to remember when people get so crazy about the demise of the student athlete, we heard Nick Saban saying that he's so glad to be out of sports because of the demise of the student athlete. We're talking about such a small amount of kids that actually make decent money on NIL. We're talking about out of hundreds of thousands of kids, maybe 2 to 3%. And, I can tell you this firsthand from having covered college football for as long as I did on ABC. These kids they get the smallest stipend for food. Half the kids are basically making their way into any cafeteria that's open to get the food later in the day, or at night, or after practice.
Yeah.
So, the boosters are going to be the one that funnels this money through the school. I think you're going to see very few schools when the laws do follow Virginia, and they will. This is just another way to get boosters to pay for it.
The Virginia said it was their obligation to have elite sports programs, or to essentially do this. They're not wrong, right? Because if you don't have elite sports programs...
Yeah, they're not wrong, but they also want to win, period. I mean, Virginia Tech, right. I mean, first of all, the rivalry within the state alone is one thing, but they all want to be competitive. This is just about keeping these boosters happy and attracting better athletes and coaches to the schools.
Okay, let me ask you. So in that state now, the universities can pay the student athletes via marketing deals, right? And so there will be a budget, whether it's $1 million, $10 million, $50, whatever the number is. There's going to be a budget. one of the things that'll have to be potentially litigated at the federal level is Title IX, right? Because you know that at the colleges, the number of scholarships has to be the same for men's and women's. Should the marketing dollars need to be divided 50-50 among the men and the women on campus?
No, what people have to understand is that the revenue is different for men's and women's, and that's what got set up this week with the Caitlin Clark reveal of how little she gets per year with the WNBA. The fact of the matter is, as much as I want to see women get equal pay, it's about revenue, and it's about the revenue that comes in. People should get the percentage of what the revenue is. It cannot be an equal split when it comes to NIL. That's very individually based. So the marketing money is very different because it is individually based.
All right. Susie, I haven't talked to you since then. Congrats on being a national champion. Go Blue. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks so much.
Slid that one in.
All right. See you.
Good news. You've got another national champion right here. I'm a UConn alum.
Every state's going to have to do this now.
I think
because if Virginia does it and North Carolina and Maryland don't do it, you know, the
state schools will never be able to compete anymore.
The governor of Connecticut said when the conversation started about Dan Hurley and whether he was going to take the Kentucky job and all of that conversation was starting, he says, we pay for excellence here in Connecticut. And I think a part of what we're seeing here is that, yes, I think Susie's point is exactly right, that this is more control of the students. This also classifying them not as employees. That's going to eliminate a lot of that unionization talk that you've heard from some of these universities, and I think it could stop.
Unionization, I think, is inevitable. I think these kids are going to unionize and go after the television
But I think
dollars.
this is an attempt to try and put a step between them.
You think so?
I do. I think it's going to be interesting because now it's marketing dollars. Now they're basically going to be consultants for the universities and be.
It's going to be like agents.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be. It creates a whole new marketplace, and so I think unions aren't going to come on the table because of the money that can come around from them being able to.
Now we know where Donald Trump got the idea for the NIL.
For the NIL, for his image taking 5% of down ballot campaign contributions. All right. Meantime, up on Capitol Hill, a bipartisan effort aims to address child care shortages impacting everyday Americans, specifically military families. The new bill, introduced by Senators Jeanne Shaheen and Joni Ernst, Democrat, Republican, would increase child care access by allowing the Department of Defense to enter partnerships with private and public child care centers and require recruitment and training opportunities for child care workers. In a statement, Senator Shaheen saying, quote, access to affordable, reliable child care is vital to the overall economic development of our communities.
That's so great. My best friend is a colonel in the Marine Corps, and she is about to take over 8th and I. She'll be the first female face of the Marine Corps, and she had 2 children
Look at
in
you
her
rubbing
40s.
Elbows with
I mean,
all
she's
the
my best friend from high school, so there you go. But I'm so proud of her, but she couldn't have done, Carrie, you couldn't have done what you're doing without the on-site child care to raise her 2 young boys who were like, you know, she had them when she was rising in the ranks. So I think it's great. This is a great opportunity, and it's really important, especially when people deploy, that there's some sort of sustainability and just continuity of care for the children.
Average weekly child care cost in this country right now, nanny basically $750, daycare north of $300, a babysitter $200. Trust me, I know. In San Francisco now, meantime, the mayor there, London Breed, scored a major win for her city today. After months of lobbying and a trip to China, she announced that the San Francisco Zoo will be receiving its first giant pandas in decades. The bears have long served as diplomatic emissaries between the U.S. and China, with panda diplomacy, as it is known, across generations. It began in 1972, following President Nixon's visit to China. The last time San Francisco hosted giant pandas was in 1985.
You have no idea how happy you just made Aaron.
By showing panda videos?
Oh, yeah.
I love the panda B-roll you guys use.
Every time we try to...
Yeah, one panda falls, the other panda pulls the panda down. It's pandemonium.
We actually so she's got a problem. London Breed's got a problem in your home state. Well, I mean, she's been heavily criticized for what's going on in San Francisco. Is this going to win the folks over?
Panda's not going to make up for it. No. I mean, look, after all they did to roll out the red carpet for President Xi at the APEC summit, you know, they did something that no San Francisco taxpayer could ever achieve, which was they cleaned up the city. If I had known that all it took was a panda, God, we would have totally changed our tactics.
It's basically like the Black Lives Matter plaza of San Francisco. Like the one thing the mayor can really point to be like, hey, look, we've done something good.
Is this going to change any minds there, or what's been done in San Francisco?
No, absolutely. It's not going to change anything for her. I mean, great, there's a panda in the zoo, but that's not going to change the poverty, the crime.
It's nice for the kids. All right, at least you could point to, we've got pandas and kids love them, right?
Kids love pandas.
I do love the
It doesn't hurt to have that under your belt. Hey, come on.
All right, on the other side of the break, before we head out, Leland Vitter joins us on what's probably on your phone right now that China says is not allowed inside its country. We're back in a few here on The Hill. Stay with us. All right, so before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. The Wall Street Journal is reporting now that the Chinese government is ordering Apple to remove popular messaging apps like WhatsApp and Threads from the App Store in that country, saying it is because of national security concerns. This comes, as you might know, as Congress is set to vote on a bill that could possibly ban the popular Chinese-owned app TikTok here in the United States. Joining me now, Leland Vitter. Leland, hello.
Is this the same Apple that we see advertise about privacy all the time? Say, I'm just double checking.
But you know what? We're potentially about to ban TikTok here, and it just goes to show you China's like, what? You're going to do that? We're gonna do this.
First of all, WhatsApp is most of these are encrypted and blocked in China.
Yep.
Social media of all American social media companies is banned in China already. I think what is interesting is how the Chinese get away with having this double standard and not being called out for it. I'm glad we are.
Who you got coming up on the show tonight?
We've got Ted Cruz coming up. He's going to be talking about the protests. I don't know if we still have the live pictures up, but it's wild what's happening in New York right now. Big groups. These are not people anymore who are just wanting a ceasefire, wanting a better life for the Palestinians. These are now full-on Hamas supporters.
We heard one woman yesterday saying, and again, this is live pictures there, Columbia University or outside of it in New York, saying, we are Hamas.
Right.
She doesn't speak for everyone, I'm sure, but you're hearing the sentiment.
But look, when you're in a protest where they are waving terrorist signs and when they are chanting things that call for the death of Jews, okay, that's now, you're now in with the lot. You've tossed yourself in. So we'll have Ted Cruz on that.
When you're saying we are Hamas, they're a foreign terrorist organization too that is sympathizing with the foreign terrorist
organization. Also just killed 1,200 people.
All right. By the way, don't forget The Hill Sunday with Chris Steyerwalt. 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, he will have Senator Michael Bennet